Hello, and welcome back to another episode of From the Field. This is a very different take than we normally do. I went out and found two lovely people from the AWS office and then got and sat down because they have had quite an interesting career progression, as the title says. So they have undergone a couple career pivots, and I wanted to go through and explore that journey with everyone. I'll let them both introduce themselves first before we go into my standard questions.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me, Casey. So, hey everyone. My name is Purnesh Tripathi. I look after the digital native customers here in New Zealand. I'm an account manager for that. And yeah, as Casey said, have had quite a few roles and have worn quite a few hats before this in my career. Happy to be here today and very happy to talk about that.
Hello, I'm Tony Sveldy. I'm responsible for the digital native segment for Australia and New Zealand. And everything that Pranesh said applies to me too.
Awesome. And I really hope the microphone's working because this would be tragic if it isn't. Prepared. Yes, we are. We're live. See, doing all the technical tests live. That's how we do it. So the really first one I want to go through is like the icebreaker question, which is like, what was the first programming language that either of you did? Pranesh, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so it was C, which I guess is extremely common from. So I grew up in India, and the first programming language that you learn is C, and you spend the first 6 to 8 years just learning that one programming language. So that was me.
And chasing down your null pointer exception.
And chasing down all the pointed exceptions that come with it. So yeah.
You have less gray hair than I would have expected a C programmer to have. So it's good. Mine was Java. It was the pedagogical language of choice at the university that I attended. And so, yeah, my entry into programming was probably less stressful than yours, but we did go back and do C, then C++. But the first language I used in real life on an actual project was probably ASP Classic.
And that's a great segue into the next question. What was the first major project you worked on? And like,
yeah, outside of school, I ended up doing some consulting work on the side. Actually, okay, two major projects. One consulting work on the side, and it was building websites. And so for that, this was 1998, 99, which was right in the sort of the early days of the internet. And ASP Classic was pretty cool at the time. So I used that. And for my job, we were going through, I was at a manufacturing company, Fortune 500 company, and one of the security initiatives was to get rid of FTP. And so I built a file transfer program using HTTPS that I wrote in Java using the ATG Dynamo application server. And as far as I know, it's still in use today, which I'm sorry if anybody is maintaining my code because it was definitely not good.
As I guess all first projects ever. So yeah, for me, not knowing what product or market research is was my biggest problem growing up. And that was just a symptom of most of what I did during my career. So I did not know that a website called Delicious existed, where you could upload your bookmarks on the internet and then keep them forever. Got extremely tired of having to maintain bookmarks in Internet Explorer and Netscape Navigator, which were the two legendary browsers of the time, and built my own bookmarking engine that would save all the bookmarks somewhere on some, I don't even remember the name. I think that website was called wetpaint.com, which was like the AWS back in the day, I guess, before AWS was AWS. And yes, that was my first project.
and now we have like a plethora of tooling around bookmarking.
Yeah.
And it is all in the cloud. Which is, it's really handy, but now I have to use all of those fancy bookmarking extensions because, like, I don't know, but the many folders across my toolbar, and then it goes deep, and you just lose track of everything, and then you have 1,000 windows open, and then Firefox consumes like your whole entire RAM.
And then you go on mobile where your extensions don't exist.
Yeah. Although those, I think Chrome has it as well, where you can actually share the sessions across the two devices, which is kind of terrifying but awesome at the same time.
Indispensable,
yeah. Because then you like realize, oh, I haven't finished shopping, and now you're finished shopping. I guess from here, we are talking about people pivoting in their career. Do feel free if you're watching to share your own stories, and actually if you have any questions for these two guests as well, just in the video, and we'll share that and talk through that with you as well. But talking through career pivots, that it was always going to have a connotation with changing a lifestyle. And Pranesh, as you mentioned before, you grew up in India. So how did you end up in the sunny New Zealand? Which I don't think anyone has ever said before.
Yeah, I think you might have just coined a new phrase. So yeah, I grew up in the mountains of India, in northern India. Quite a similar weather. So that is the first question that I used to get a lot when I came to New Zealand. How are you finding the weather? I'm like, very close to home. But it was beautiful. I came here to do my master's in data science. So I did my undergrad in engineering. In IT engineering, and then worked as a technology lead, a VP of engineering at a bunch of startups, started my own company, and felt like something was still missing. I wanted to learn more, and decided that what better place to do that than the University of Auckland, considering that they invented R, which was at the time the dominant language for machine learning and AI worldwide. So I came to do my master's in data science here with an intent that I'll do my master's and then head back. And it's been 6 years since I've been heading back, and there's no plans in sight. So yeah, enjoyed my time a lot here. It's a beautiful country. No matter where you are, fun fact, you're never more than 280 kilometers from a coastline, which is as fantastic as it gets if you love the oceans.
And you have come from the great US all the way to, the not so great Australia.
Yeah. Okay. That's a potential landmine sentence right there. Yes, I grew up in the Midwestern United States, so Indianapolis, and was working for my company. We were putting Oracle ERPs in around all of our manufacturing sites, and one of those was in Australia. So I was there for 7 months. One of the funniest questions that I got asked is, why does it take you 7 months to do a project here? Because this was another implementation team, and they were used to much shorter implementation cycles. So I still don't have a good answer for that one. But we were based there from kind of January through September. I fell in love with Antipodes in general, but Australia, Melbourne in particular, and both figuratively and literally, because I also met a woman when I was there. And so the next implementation project took me to Singapore, but I definitely wanted to come back and found a way to do that with the same company. And that was 20 years ago or so.
Oh, so it's been quite a while.
You can't tell by my accent. It's stubborn, but
You also look like you're in the early 20s.
yeah. Oh, thank you. It's the camera.
Oh no, the camera adds pounds. That's why it always looks like that. We have someone worked in a grocery store for over a decade, pivoted to data engineering. Well, that's quite a pivot. Zero STEM background, partly thanks to a few AWS certifications. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Like, data engineering isn't a simple or straightforward field. I know a lot of people that have been immersed in IT for a long time and still struggle with a lot of those concepts and implementations. So that's very impressive. If you actually want to share anything more about it in terms of like what certifications you did or how you actually got onto them, that'd be great. While we're waiting or typing that out, I guess our one is also you've had quite a storied career, as you've alluded to, Tony. So what was the most important lesson that you've learned over your career?
That's a good one. I would say the most important lesson is that you can't do everything yourself. And I honestly struggle with that because I have a lot of interests and I like to learn about a lot of things, and you naturally think that you therefore can do those things. And the reality is 20 years ago, I would say you could probably get away with it because your competition was much smaller, was more regionally based. And nowadays it's global. And so to be the best of the best, there's just too many, the disciplines are too deep. And in scientific fields anyways, like we are in, it's too deep to be good at everything yourself. And so learning to rely on other people and use soft influence to get what you want. I think when you're building a website in your basement, like I started off doing, everything was in your control. And you could affect the outcomes that you wanted to do without relying on, within limits, obviously, but without relying on anyone else. And nowadays, I would say that's it's the opportunities to be able to do that are very slim. Yeah, learning how to motivate other people to align their interests with yours and to work together as a team, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say that aligns very heavily with what I've learned over the years as well, where I started off pretty much doing and trying to do everything myself. And then over time, realizing that wasn't really helping. Like, there's only so many hours in the day that you can work. And at some point, you're going to have to share that to actually make any meaningful, difference and impact within the business or industry that you're working on. And going back to JPP, I'll call them going forward. So yeah, going to the local AWS user groups, it's great that we actually have that and we do a lot of support. I'd support the ones in New Zealand as well. Did Cloud Practitioner, nice. Oh, sweet. So you actually did a lot. And I think we have a new platform now called it's like Quest something.
Yeah.
And that's like a Cloud Quest, and that's more interactive, which is always pretty epic. And yeah, the AWS CDK, I'm a .NET developer, so I do a lot of C#, and I absolutely love the AWS CDK because I use a lot of reflection. So just by adding like a class or an interface, it actually will build out all the infrastructure behind that too. And then I can, on the class, I have some fields and stuff like that, pre-configurations. And so I don't know. I just geek out on
Nice.
managing to make things really confusing for other people. I guess over to you, Panish, for that one. What's your lesson that you've want to share over your career?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson that I learned throughout over my career, and then it disintegrates very rapidly because I've had so many roles over the years and in different organizations and in different sized organizations. I think the biggest and most important lesson for me was things are breakable if you take them a piece at a time. Trying to boil the ocean is not the right approach, no matter how easy a problem seems at first. So, breaking everything down into such small bite-sized chunks that they're tackleable and they start looking easy at that point, and it isn't a problem anymore. It's just a step. To be able to do that has allowed me to move towards different fields, and we can talk a lot more about this. But growing in my career in general, to be able to break things down was probably the most important lesson that I learned because initially when I started, uh, I did not have a mentor back in India because no one had done this sort of a career transition over and over again before. Or if they obviously have had, I didn't meet them. So it was quite tricky. It was quite tricky to navigate each and everything myself, and it looked so overwhelming, starting right from GRE preparation, which any of you who haven't taken an international university exam, it's quantitative and verbal that you are assessed on, and the English is on another level if you're not a native speaker. And it took quite a bit of effort to just get to that bar. And what helped me was that approach of, all right, let's break it down into 5 words a day, 2 words an evening. So while I would eat lunch, I would just memorize 2 words and try to keep repeating them in my head. So that kind of thinking, I think that was the biggest lesson.
Yeah, and it's also quite impressive. A lot of the international people that you see here will quite often, they won't just be speaking 2 languages, they'll be 3 or 4, which is terrifying. I can't even speak English properly. Right, and you know those exams, like I've actually looked through them before, and I'm like, I would probably like borderline pass this, which isn't great, but you know, we all need to improve in some way or form, which is the whole topic here. So I guess you mentioned like the mentor type thing. Have you had a mentor?
Yeah. As soon as I moved to New Zealand, I did. I guess the individual identified me, not me them. They are in AWS, and that's why I won't mention any names. But at the same time, he sort of helped me progress throughout my career, be it the career transition or just be it growth, and to understand what you were talking before, like how to influence people using just your soft skills alone and grow out of that mindset of, you know what, I'm an amazing solution architect. I'll build this entire thing alone. And to move from there to someone who can effectively leverage other team members who are there to help you, very keen to help you, but can't if you don't ask for it. Like to do that entire transition. Yeah, he's been instrumental in my life, 100%.
Tony, what about yourself?
I've had a lot. I say one of the other lessons that I've learned along the way for me that relates to mentors is my stance towards meeting new people has changed a lot over the years as well. And I would say by nature, I'm probably more of an introvert. And so meeting new people historically has never been something that I leap at the occasion to do. Over the past few years, though, I think what I've noticed is the value of ideas and where new ideas come from is other people. And so you can't have you can't make the best decisions without having as much information as possible. And how do you get that? By talking to others. And there's actually a really good book on this called The Rational Optimist, which talks about why cities are the economic powerhouses that they are. It's because ideas have sex. Like it's the cross-pollination of new ideas, and that's where innovation comes from. I've turned now my stance is always, if it's a chance to meet a new person, I'll take it because I'm really open to that, and I have had a lot of interesting encounters along the way. And so I guess through that accumulated mentors, and I wouldn't say that they're like lifelong or anything, but they make turning points in my life, and I take what I need, I value what I have at the time and incorporate it into my body of knowledge, I guess. And so I've had a lot of those kinds of people that I've learned from, or just had their willingness to answer my questions and have a coffee has had an impact on my life. So yeah, really grateful for that.
Yeah, and I do echo that. It's that meeting new people with different skills or different ideologies, different ideas, and then being able to have that professional conversation with them where you are like, you push them and they push you back. And then from that, there's growth, and also having the ability to observe people makes a big difference. So I really get behind it. And I guess we're about halfway through, so I really do want to skip slightly ahead based on what you're saying in terms of a few things. Obviously, you have had quite a technical career up until now, and so what pivoted you from that deep technical person you are now through to a more, what do you say, a non-technical role?
Yeah.
I'll let you tell me like what your new role is and something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to talk about that. And that is the most common question that I get asked. So for context to all the viewers who obviously don't know me yet, I joined Amazon as a solution architect. Something happened.
So good, it's the wireless just...
All good. So I joined Amazon as a solution architect in the beginning. That was 4 years ago, feels like 400. And I stayed in that role for approximately half of my tenure. So 2 years into the role, I was still being a solution architect, had a few up levels along the way, and was really enjoying what I was doing. But at a certain point in time, it started to become very apparent to me that I could be contributing a lot more value to our customers by engaging and owning some of those relationships. So as a solution architect at Amazon, we work with executives, mostly technical executives, but also non-tech executives, to drive sort of the technical strategy for organizations that we work with. While the account manager, which is my current role, is the one who actually owns those relationships. So the idea is that the account manager would kickstart a particular initiative that the business is keen to drive, and then the SAs see that through. So to have more experience and visibility of that first part of the experience and to contribute more in that, I felt like it was the natural career progression for me, especially considering, as you might have already noticed, how much I love to talk. So getting to talk to more people was always the dream, and I felt like that was the right place and the right time for me to do it.
So, and I do second you do love to talk. That's why we get along so well. And Tony, you've had a very similar move. You've moved from the technical side to the dark side as well, as I call it.
Yeah. It's interesting because 50% of people call it the light side and 50% call it the dark side. So it depends who you ask. But yeah, very similar for me too. And I'd say I've always had an entrepreneurial bent. And my first job was when I was 8 or 10 mowing lawns. And so I kind of worked all through school, paid for my university that way. So when I graduated uni, it was the nadir of the .com boom or bust, I guess. And so it was slim pickings as far as engineering roles, but I ended up in a big company. I never intended to go to a big Fortune 500 company, but ended up staying there for 16 years because of all the opportunities to move kind of parallel with other types of roles and international experience and tuition reimbursement. And so the really great benefits, which is I paid my time back there. So that was 16 years, but I still had that desire to go into more of a business building or especially into a software company, which I then eventually did. And in those roles as a CTO, you're responsible for, you're not responsible for selling, but you do it. And especially with, pre-sales type conversations, that's a big part of your role, but you're not measured on it. And when I pivoted then to AWS, again, I told myself I would never go into a big company. And the great thing about AWS is that while it is big, it doesn't feel like it. It feels like a giant startup. So that is one of the things I love about working here. Anyways, that I guess burning latent desire to be a business builder came to the fore eventually. And what I loved most about being an SA manager at AWS was having the customer conversations and seeing what we could do together to grow their business. And so the opportunity came up to, again, do one of those parallel shifts kind of sideways and move into a role where I was measured on the ability to do that. and it's been a great move. And I get measured on doing what I really enjoyed, which is great.
Nice. And like, and also the career pivot doesn't necessarily have to be like, going from, technical to non-technical sales, something like that. Where I always saw like the pivot in my career was going from like a consultancy, which is technical consultancy, through to a product company, product startup. And both of those companies were quite small. And so a lot of the process and the red tape and everything like that had been removed. Like I still remember getting on like an absolute bender with the CEO and CTO of like those companies, and like it was just every Friday you just go out, you get hammered, and then they might carry you back, and you might be carrying them back. You might end up in the bush, but that's youth, that's your early 20s, and that was fun. And then this opportunity, as you said, came up, and then I pivoted into probably the complete opposite direction of a small 20-person startup through to one of the biggest employers of the planet. So, and again, that comes with all of those layers that are on it. We do say it's like a big startup, and that is true in my opinion. But there is definitely, you do see the layers of the process and that coming through. But it's been awesome, and I actually don't regret the change at all. It's been a great learning experience. I've grown so much in the last like 3 to 4 years for it. So it was scary, and I did doubt myself. I always say that when you join or start a new venture in life, I think when you move a country, there's always that 6 months of, oh my God, or what have I done? Like, this is terrifying. Have I made the right choice? And then you just kind of go, no, like I did this for a reason, and you just commit to it. And then over time, it just becomes that new normal. And
I'm jealous that your freak out only lasted 6 months. It's pretty good.
It comes in waves.
Okay.
And I guess from there is now that you got the added insight, because one of the cool things about working at AWS and stuff like that, and as you said, talking to lots and lots of different businesses, is that we get to see industry trends and technology trends out there. Like, so what is a new technology or industry trend that you're most excited about? Tony, we'll start with you.
Okay. I can't say generative AI because there's too much hype around that. I think the thing that excites me the most about generative AI, it would be interactive video experiences, and you start to see a little bit of this capability. Like Meta has something around this, but to do it well is very expensive, and they're doing 1 second clips or something like that. So to me, that's the ultimate of the generative AI hype would be the interactive real-time video. AR and VR is one that seems always around the corner a little bit, but I do think like that continues to have a lot of promise. And I don't own any headsets. My friends do, and I always enjoy, but it still is kind of that edge. Like you can't see how you'd integrate it in real life. Google Glass was an attempt at that, but so I do think that is, I'm curious, I guess, but we'll see where that goes. But I'd love to see, kind of generative AI is rounding that first wave of the hype curve now, and we're kind of going into the valley of despair of what are we actually going to do with this. And then that second phase is going to be where the real stuff starts to come out, and I think video is going to be one of those.
And Vinesh, you?
Yeah.
If you say generative AI, I'm going to ask you later.
Yeah. I won't. I do have a technology, and there is an industry trend around it. I don't know if I'd call it new though, but edge, and in particular edge devices, I think that we still haven't reached peak edge. And there was that hype again, like that we are now in that valley of despair, I guess, with edge devices, where it was like Internet of Things. This is the next big thing. It will change everything. It will change all your lives forever. And it got limited to smart kettles and smart toasters. And so I think there's still a lot of untapped potential in there.
Refrigerators
Playing YouTube videos.
Yeah.
I don't know why I have to stand and watch them instead of sitting on the couch. So I think there's a lot of untapped potential that will come out with a more robust ecosystem. I'm glad that it's sort of merging with that entire arena of Samsung doing their ecosystems with tiles and phones, and the newer Galaxy Watches, Buds, all are equipped with IoT sensors in them to do clever things. And to be honest, just add value to the everyday consumer experience. Like, I cannot count how many times I forget where I've kept my earbuds. And the fact that the case can now make a tiny sound to let me know where it is has been a game changer for me.
It's a quantum leap.
Yeah, it is a quantum leap in my day to day, right? And so that kind of minuscule value adds will eventually compound in us seeing very vast ecosystems of sophisticated IoT. I think that's something that I'm really pumped about.
Mm. I would say that the trend of edge uptake in agriculture is where I'm always really excited about. Like, it's probably, established. There's a lot of edge in agriculture, mostly indoor, where I'm actually more excited about the outdoor stuff because that's where you get hectares and hectares and hectares of agriculture happening. And, there can be lots of differences in soils, and that can lead to a variety of waste, especially when it comes to, runoff. And anything like that, and rivers, which obviously in New Zealand we're quite passionate about our clean and green, rivers and waterways. So I'm quite passionate about that stuff, and I think that's going to be awesome. And as that becomes more available and ready and making changes, that's going to lead to lots of good things, in my opinion. And something, yeah. So pretty much what JPP also said. And I guess we'll go to some of the more closing questions around here. Panish, this is a great question for you, because I know that you always recommend me endless amounts of books, what I never read.
Easy to see. So.
He just reads the Cliff Notes. Look how smart I am.
Yeah.
Actually, that's how I passed English at high school. Cliff Notes, yeah.
Great invention.
That was the best thing ever. Thought I was so smart, and everyone else was doing it. So, what are the free books you'd recommend to the audience, and why?
Beautiful question. And I do enjoy recommending books a lot. So this is great. I'll recommend 2 nonfiction and then 1 fiction, and I'll explain why with each of them. I think the first book that I would recommend everyone to read, and I always do, is Sapiens. If you haven't read it, the subtitle is A Brief History of Mankind, Humans, and it goes into great depth about where we've come from. And I think to really appreciate where we've reached and where we are going, one has to have a good understanding of where we've come from. So from the jungles of Savannah to have reached this far that we can have a live stream, which our ancestors back then would have deemed almost godlike, is fantastic. So that is the first book that I would recommend. The second one, it would be Thinking Fast and Slow. It's by a Nobel Prize winner called Daniel Kahneman, and it is a fantastic book about how our brains work. And so many a times to this day, even, I still find myself going back to the learnings from that book and being like, am I thinking with system 1 or system 2? It'll make sense when you read them. We had live streams, limited audience around a campfire. Yeah, I agree. Boom.
We're just missing the guitar.
We're just missing that guitar and the dances of Casey and Tony.
And there was no lag either. It was,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone wants to see me dancing. I have danced occasionally at a nightclub, and I think that was the reason I got kicked out.
We don't. No.
So, yeah, those 2 would be my top non-fiction books. And then in fiction, if you haven't read it already, there's a trilogy called The Three-Body Problem. It is the most thought-provoking non-fiction book that I've ever read in my life. And it deals, I won't spoil anything, but it deals with how humans behave, how society works, how people operate under different conditions, and based on what their upbringings are. It's a beautiful, beautiful trilogy, The Three-Body Problem. There is a Netflix show coming for anyone who's lazy. I'm really looking forward to it next year. But if you're going to do it, that would be my third book for sure.
I thought the lazy person's book was Audible.
Yeah, or you could do Audible, 100%, and they're fantastic. The orator is beautiful. Will give you goosebumps with pretty much the end of every chapter.
Tony, do you have free books, or do you?
I've got 300 books.
Nice.
Okay, so here, number 1 is. Oh, no, I was kidding. So I do Audible a lot. So that's how I squeeze in books is on walks and runs and things like that. But my problem is that my favorite book is usually the one that I'm reading now. And so, or maybe you could just say I have a bad memory, but I would say there's three classes of books that I have favorites in. So one of the my favorites is kind of the biography or autobiographical, or just the story of origin stories of companies and things like that. And so in that category, there are two that stand out. One is Steve Jobs, the Walter Isaacson version. Isaacson, because of this book, I started reading all of his other biographies, and he's an excellent author. He does a really good job of telling the story as well as the context around the story. And so for this, he interviewed a lot of Steve's old girlfriends and family members, and people who were still in Apple, and just paints a very comprehensive picture of Steve the man. And so that was a great book. Another one in that category was Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. And I was just talking with someone this morning who had worked at Nike, and he said that it did a great job of capturing the essence of Nike's culture. And so I thought that was really cool. That was one that it takes you on the journey, startup of Nike and the pitfalls. And this sounds corny, but I laughed and I cried, and I loved the book. It was a great one. I also love history books, and right now I'm reading one or listening to one called The Peacemaker, which is a history of the Reagan years. And then there's a class of books that I would say would be like more cerebral, and in that category, probably Capital in the 21st Century. Thomas Piketty, he's a award-winning, I think he won a Nobel Peace Prize, or was at least nominated for one because of that. And he's an economist, essentially, French economist. And he looked at the history of for countries that have income taxes. So there's good data sources going back 150 years or so, US, Germany, and the UK, I think. And what he showed was over time, the probability that you are significantly better off than your parents, which is the basis of the American dream and the Australian dream, and I'm sure there's a New Zealand dream around that as well, is actually somewhat false. It's like you are most likely to fall within 5% or so of your parents' socioeconomic station in life. And he teased out, it's a tome. I mean, it's a really long book, but he teased out some really good predictors. And so for me, because I was having children at the time, and I thought, what's the best thing that I could do to give them a leg up in life? And the crux that he distilled it down to was essentially you benefit from your networks. And so the whole reason that elite schools are beneficial, and that the rich stay richer kind of a thing, is because of that network effect. And so there, I saved you weeks of reading. Just go build networks.
It all comes down to networks. Nice. And I think the New Zealand dream, very much for my generation anyway, has been in touch with nature, doing hunting, fishing, doing tramping and hikes and stuff like that. It's quite a different was a dream than you get from most countries. It's very people would say basic, but it's quite humbling, and I actually quite enjoy that that feeling, whereas it's kind of like you're not being forced by thing. A lot of people are just like, oh well, why aren't you in the bush and stuff like that. So it's quite a different And it's great because in New Zealand, to your point, even in Auckland, which is our biggest city, you're never more than 30 minutes from a bushwalk someplace. And where you will run out of cell towers reception. Yeah. So you will be pretty much in the middle of the hills for 40 minutes from the city, with no cell phone, which is again probably alien to a lot of countries out there. And I guess to stick with the topic that we are covering today, if you didn't have to worry about the costs involved, in terms of retooling and reskilling, if you didn't work in IT, so just pretend you just suddenly was I'm not working in IT anymore, what job would you do?
I would be a carpenter, no question. I love to build things and work with my hands, and with carpentry or trades like that, you immediately see results, which in our line of work isn't as common. It's much more ephemeral and long term. So yeah, definitely.
So what's stopping you?
Because I like to build things for me, but the thought of doing it for someone else is abhorrent because they're going to have opinions, and I'd rather do it my way.
That's very much a hobby type.
Yes.
Thank you. I understand that. All right, you, Pranesh.
I thought a lot about this. I would struggle, but I think if there was one thing that I would pick that I would really enjoy, and I think I can definitely only do things that I would really enjoy. I don't like and I can't imagine myself working in a field that I won't enjoy, I think it would be photography. So I've played around, eventually like had a bunch of lenses at my home, learned a lot, self-taught photographer, those hobby people that you see on the internet, one of those who would go on photo walks and then make the most terrible photos. And
But now you can do it with drones as well.
yes,
Mm.
and I do have one, which I've got like 4 hours of total flight time in 4 years. So yeah, like,
Really well used. It's an investment.
but yeah, I would be a photographer.
And that's also a good question to everyone viewing here. Like, if you weren't in your particular vertical, or like if you do work in IT, like what would you like pivot into? It's quite a interesting question. Because when I first asked this to Pinesh, he sat there and then his first response was, I don't know, unemployed. Which I'm like, dude, you really need some hobbies. And I think for me, like I have thought about like if I ever won lotto, what would I do? And I think it'd be similar. I'd actually probably become like something that you use your hands, like maybe like a builder or something like that. Probably not a carpenter, because I think that requires a bit too much attention to detail.
And you can lose fingers quite
Yeah.
easily. So, yeah.
And I think like I did woodworking and stuff like that in school, and I wasn't the best at it, so hence why I'm in IT.
Fair.
Yeah. And if you do have any questions to ask the three of us, then now's your time. Otherwise, we will call a quiz there. And again, thank you for Tony for joining us
A pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
all the way from Melbourne. We managed to bring you over to sunny New Zealand.
It was worth it. It's a great day in Wellington.
And you know what they say, you can never beat a good day in Wellington.
That's right.
The good day in Wellington.
Yeah, it only happens twice a year, so it's fine. And also, Pinesh, thank you for coming all the way down from Auckland, which
Thank you so much.
quite often it's very hard to get to Auckland. They're out of Auckland. So
Thank you.
thank you for gracing us with your presence.
Thanks for having me, man. It
Cool.
was great.
And we got one teaching. I've got to help a few people get into tech as well. Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah.
It depends on what teaching. I don't think I'd ever see myself as a school teacher. Like the amount of stress of dealing with kids and stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I'd be able to handle it. Like I have the utmost respect for like primary through to college teachers. Like the mental fortitude. And I'm pretty sure I have received a test paper back when I was younger with a red wine stain on it. So
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining.
well, thank you everyone for coming through and actually being here and sharing your stories and everything like that. It's been awesome. And again, one more time, thank you, Pinesh and Tony, for sharing your journeys. And until next time, Mā te wā.